It began with the soft chime of the cafe door and the uneasy shuffle of a man who didn't quite fit in with the warmth inside. His coat was expensive, tailored to a body that carried power, yet his eyes darted with the helplessness of someone lost. At his side, a little girl no older than 7 tugged nervously on his sleeve, her thin sweater hardly enough for the wet chill outside. The girl's hair was tangled, her sneakers scuffed and splitting at the seams, her cheeks blotched from the wind. Nobody noticed them much, except the young waitress, balancing 2 trays and a life of her own burdens. She froze when she caught his glance, because behind that polished exterior, his expression wasn't commanding at all. It was the expression of a father on the verge of breaking, and she, though just another server in a chain cafe, was about to step into a story that would change both of their lives in ways neither of them could imagine. Elena had been working doubles all week, her back aching under the strain of cheap shoes and the constant demand to smile. Rent was 3 days overdue again, the eviction notice curling at the corner of her apartment door like an ever-present threat. In her fridge, only half a jar of peanut butter and a bruised apple waited. Her little brother, barely 13, had gone to school that morning in a jacket with duct-taped elbows, and the image still gnawed at her. Yet in the cafe she straightened her apron, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, and forced grace into every step. She couldn't afford to look as tired as she felt. "Table for 2?" she asked the man gently, meeting his eyes. He hesitated, glancing around the crowded cafe as though trying to decipher a code everyone else already understood. "Yes," he finally muttered, his voice low, then added awkwardly, "Somewhere. Quieter, if possible." Elena led them to a corner booth, pulling out the chair for the girl. The little one slid into it with a soft sigh, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, as if afraid of doing something wrong. Elena crouched slightly, lowering her voice. "Hot chocolate, maybe. Extra marshmallows?" The girl's face brightened instantly, her lips parting as if she wanted to say yes, but she turned to her father first, eyes searching for permission. He nodded faintly, distracted, and Elena's heart pinched. When she returned with the steaming cup, she caught the man staring blankly at the menu. His fingers drummed against the table, then clenched, as though even simple decisions felt overwhelming. "Everything looks the same," he muttered under his breath, not really to her. I don't know. It's okay," Elena said softly, placing the cup in front of the girl. "The soup's warm and simple. Might help." He looked at her then, really looked, as though her calmness was some kind of rope thrown into his storm. "Yes, soup, thank you." For the next hour, she watched from behind the counter, noticing how he barely touched his own plate, but kept glancing at his daughter, ensuring she ate every bite. The girl devoured the soup with quiet determination, sipping the chocolate slowly to make it last. Elena couldn't stop thinking about her brother at home, probably heating tap water for instant noodles, and she fought the sting in her chest. Halfway through her shift, the cafe grew busier, the hum of conversation rising. Still, her attention kept flicking to the man. His suit, though expensive, was wrinkled, his tie loosened clumsily. He carried the aura of someone important, yet the vulnerability clung to him like a shadow. She overheard fragments, him asking about schools in the area, stumbling over questions to the girl like he was trying to remember how to be present. Around the 3-minute mark of their stay, the rehook appeared. He pulled out his wallet to pay early, fumbling through bills, then stopped suddenly. For a flicker of a second, Elena thought he didn't have enough money. But no, it was overflowing with crisp notes. The paradox froze her. Why did a man with so much money look so broken, so unsure, like someone with nothing at all? Later, when she collected their plates, the little girl smiled up at her. "Thank you. Nobody ever makes it feel this nice." Her voice was a whisper, but it hit Elena like a flood. Nobody ever makes it feel this nice. By evening, the cafe had thinned out. The father lingered, hesitant to leave, as though the outside world was heavier than the walls of this modest place. Elena leaned near, lowering her tone.
Is everything all right? You seem
A little lost. His jaw tightened. For a moment it seemed he might dismiss her. Then, quietly, he said, "Her mother passed away 2 months ago."
I'm trying, but I don't know how. Elena's breath caught.
The girl traced circles on the table with her fingertip, silent, but her small shoulders trembled. A widow's shadow, a child too young for such grief, it all sat heavy in the air. Elena wanted to reach out, but her hands clutched her notepad too tightly. She thought of her own mother, gone too soon, and her brother's hollow eyes. Before she could speak, the manager barked her name, breaking the fragile bubble. She flinched, standing upright quickly, yet, when she glanced back, she saw the man bury his face in his hands, the girl resting her head against his arm. It was the image of collapse, of a fortress falling, and that was when Elena knew she couldn't just be their waitress. She had to be something more, even if she didn't yet know what that meant. Elena finished her shift an hour later, exhaustion pulling at her every step, but she lingered near the counter instead of clocking out. The man and his daughter were still there, the girl now dozing lightly against his arm, her tiny fists curled like fragile knots of trust. He looked around as though embarrassed, out of place in a space where people laughed over lattes and took selfies in the glow of the pendant lights. When Eleanor approached, he straightened quickly, smoothing his suit jacket, though the gesture felt more like a shield than confidence. "You don't have to leave right away," she said softly. "We usually let parents rest when their kids fall asleep."
Nobody's gonna kick you out. His eyes flickered with relief, though he tried to hide it. Thank you, I
"Didn't expect kindness here." "Sometimes it's the only thing that matters," Elena replied, then hesitated before adding, "I know what it feels like, trying to keep it together for someone small who depends on you." She didn't explain, but her mind raced with images of her brother counting out coins at the corner store. The man studied her for a moment, then offered a name.
Daniel! His hand was steady when he extended it, but there was something haunted in his gaze.
"And this is Sophie." "Elena," she said, shaking his hand lightly, careful not to wake the girl. For a moment, they sat in silence, the cafe's background music blending with the hum of the coffee machines. Then Daniel's voice cracked just slightly as he asked, "How do you do it? Smile when everything feels broken?" Her throat tightened. "Because if I stop, my brother sees."
And I can't let him think we're already beaten. That night, after they finally left, she walked home in the rain, her sneakers soaking through, her stomach twisting from hunger.
The apartment was dim, the bulb in the kitchen flickering again. Her brother slept curled on the couch under a thin blanket, his backpack propped against the wall with duct tape holding one strap. She opened the fridge, stared at the half-empty shelves, and closed it quietly. The next morning, when she arrived at the cafe, she nearly dropped her tray.
Daniel was back.
This time, Sophie wore a clean dress and her hair was brushed, though her shoes were still the same frayed pair. Daniel looked sharper, his tie knotted properly, but the nervousness lingered. He smiled faintly when he saw Elena, as though the familiarity steadied him. They began to talk more, little exchanges between orders. Sophie giggled when Elena brought whipped cream shaped like a heart on her cocoa. And Elena noticed things, how Daniel's hand trembled when he signed the check, how he seemed almost afraid of failing at fatherhood in public, how his eyes softened every time Sophie smiled. About a week later came the rehook. Eleanor stepped out from behind the counter during a lull and saw a pair of businessmen stride up to Daniel, greeting him with deference. They whispered about contracts and mergers, their tone changing instantly when they realized who he was.
"So the board's waiting," one of them urged.
And that's when Elena's breath caught. Daniel wasn't just another grieving father fumbling through life. He was someone powerful, wealthy, a CEO. The contrast almost made her dizzy. All this time, she'd thought he was lost because of poverty, but no, his struggle wasn't with money. It was with grief, with being thrust into single fatherhood, with finding humanity in a world that saw him as untouchable. And maybe that was why he kept coming back, to be treated not as a millionaire, but as a man trying to hold his daughter together. Still, Elena pulled away that day, suddenly ashamed of her own frayed shoes, the rent notice folded in her apron pocket. Why would someone like him care about a waitress clinging to survival? She decided to keep her distance, but Daniel noticed. One evening, as the cafe emptied, he stopped her.
Did I do something wrong? You don't talk to me like before. Elena's cheeks flushed.
You don't owe me an explanation.
You're obviously important. I shouldn't get in the way. His eyes narrowed, almost hurt.
Important? Elena, I sit here because you don't treat me like a headline or a wallet. You speak to me like a person. That's rarer than you think. Her lips trembled, but she forced a smile.
I'm just doing my job. No, he said firmly, shaking his head.
You're doing more than that. You see people when they're invisible. That night, as Elena locked up, she found an envelope slipped under the counter with her name on it. Inside was not cash, but a simple note in Daniel's careful handwriting. One act of kindness can reroute a life. You've done that for Sophie and me. Let me help reroute yours. Beneath it was a business card, his direct line. Elena stood in the quiet cafe, tears blurring the words. She thought of her brother's empty backpack, the eviction notice, the endless grind. For the first time in months, she let herself imagine a different future, one where kindness didn't just survive in the shadows, but changed everything. The next morning, she picked up the phone because sometimes fate begins not with grand gestures, but with a cup of cocoa, a quiet corner booth, and the courage to notice someone's breaking point. And from that day on, neither Elena nor Daniel ever carried their burdens alone again.